Okay, hello everybody. It is my great pleasure today to welcome a guest with us, Dr. Avi Charlton. Avi is a GP in Melbourne and operates the Low Carb Clinic and does a lot of other things I've since found out besides just being a GP. Mum to two boys and so very busy lady. Just ran a holistic health retreat, I think, last weekend and doing breathwork clinics and speaking and has written a book and so very busy lady. So Avi, thank you for making time on a weekend, which is family time, to come and share with us. Welcome.
Hi, Larry. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, just for the sake of people listening, some will be Australians and some from overseas, just share a little bit about your story and particularly how you've ended up in a low carb clinic as a GP.
Yeah, it's an amazing journey so far. I've been a GP for 20 years now, and I've been just a normal GP and seeing coughs and colds, whatever comes into the door. And maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, I started to look into myself because there was a patient who came into the clinic and it was a normal day. I was a bit tired, overworked, I had young kids, and the patient looked at me and said, "Oh, you're having another baby." And I had two already and I wasn't pregnant. So I was thinking, oh my God, I need to lose some weight. So I decided to join the local gym to go get some exercise. And I decided to do an 8 week body transformation challenge with the local gym because I thought that was good fun. And I saw in social media that gym had good results. So I did that 8 week body transformation challenge. And to my surprise, the trainer got me a spreadsheet to tell me what to eat, how much protein, how much carbs, how much
Yeah.
fat, and told me to be in ketosis. So I learned about keto, low carb, and I lost 4 kilos, 4% body fat, and I was feeling much better, more energy, and feeling less bloated, bit better equipped to deal with my little kids back then. I started learning about low carb. I did lectures on low carb down under, and I then COVID hit, and I had lots more free time. I signed up to a nutrition network with lots of talks and online learning, and I learned how to prescribe low carbohydrate diets with therapeutic carbohydrate restriction to my patient, and that's mainly to lose weight, gain health, and even reverse diabetes. Some patients can come off medications, which is amazingly rewarding for a doctor
Yeah.
who prescribes lots of medication. And people feel better. They feel less bloated, they get more energy, and they have much less chronic condition. So I keep learning, lots dive into different rabbit holes and learned about low carb, keto diet, and carnivore diet. And I've met lots of friends who's gone carnivore and they feel amazing. And it's opened up my new door on how amazing carnivore diets can be. But personally, I'm not carnivore myself, but I'm very, very meat based. Maybe 80, 90% of my meals are mostly meat. And I still eat veggies because I would like my kids to keep eating veggies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my journey in a nutshell, which is been amazing so far.
Yeah. So what I found different about you, because I've been to see you as a patient in your clinic
Mm,
a couple of times now, and so has my wife. And I'm 68 years old, and so I guess been to doctors all my life, but relatively
mm,
few times because I'd always been fairly healthy.
yeah.
Um, but my experience of doctors was that you go in there, they're extremely busy. There's a waiting
Mm.
room packed with people, and you sit there and wait and wait and wait. And then you get called in, and the doctor is very rushed, and he's tired, and he's busy, and he's got 20 other patients out there. And so you share your story, and he he or she will order some tests maybe and have a look at you and prod and poke and make a diagnosis and then give you a script and you're on your way. That's been my experience, and I guess for a lot of people, that's been our experience. And yet, when I come to see you, I think the very first question you asked me was, "What do I eat?" I've never had a doctor ask me that question before, ever. And
Okay.
so that really surprised me. I thought, well, there's something different here already, because I knew enough to know that what we eat has a huge bearing on our health, and so I was sold. But in this journey for you, how has
Mhm.
it been transitioning to sort of a low carb doctor, with colleagues and other medical people? Um, do they think you're crazy, or do they just accept you, or how does that go now?
Yeah, yeah. I must admit that I still work in a very busy clinic. Sometimes I still keep patients waiting, but I've designed my low carb clinic to be a bit lengthier, to be 45 minutes or 30 minutes to accommodate to listening to the patient, which I think is really important that a doctor listens to the patient. But to answer your question, how do my colleagues see me is the doctors in the clinic are quite respectful of how I operate, and they're actually quite in awe that I have made my consultations longer and I listen to my patients for longer durations and ask them about what they eat. A lot of my colleagues don't follow my trajectory and they just continue what they normally do, which is
Yeah,
fine. But I think the colleagues in my clinic is being very respectful of what my journey has been. The online in the social media, sometimes I talk about my journey, and sometimes it does get some younger GPs inspired and interested in learning on how to talk about nutrition and how to go into this journey. But there is some kickbacks, not kickbacks, but uh, some other doctors who always say low carb ketogenic diets. It's not sustainable. How can people just eat meat? How can you practice like that? So there are doctors who doesn't support how I operate, which is fine.
mm.
And but yeah, it's been amazing journey so far. I've had lots of support with
Oh,
my
that's
colleagues and
encouraging.
doctors. Yeah.
Yes, I've had a relatively short journey with the carnivore community, although I was
Mhm.
familiar with low carb and keto.
Mhm.
Um, but in my interaction with people on carnivore diet and those who are interested in starting, um, one of their biggest obstacles they face is their doctor. And
Mm.
many of them are literally afraid of going to see their doctor, thinking they'll be
Mm.
told stuff they don't want to hear, and not knowing how to talk about their diet, and they think up creative ways not to mention the words low carb or carnivore, and
Yeah. Yep.
I can certainly identify with that. Um,
Yep.
many many doctors will do a blood panel with
Mhm.
carnivores, and quite often with carnivores, for a reason that I've never really understood, but often a person on carnivore has high LDL, which goes up
Mm.
when they start carnivore. And that, of course, immediately triggers the doctor's attention. And it's a red flag for many doctors. And their, their, their immediate reaction is to prescribe a statin because they
Mm.
want to get
Mm.
that LDL down. Now,
Yeah.
that seems to be a pretty entrenched view of
Mm.
not just LDL but total cholesterol and that.
Mm. Yep.
I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on all that, and particularly thinking of carnivores who might have this issue, and maybe some advice on how they could approach the subject with their doctor, and how they can get their doctor on board instead of working against them. Why?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's just the carnivores. I think it's the low carb and ketogenic people are also having high cholesterol and high LDLs. Like to explain to you what's happening is I think it's the So the doctors are hard to understand about the cholesterol profile and high LDL because we've never been taught a new way of learning. We've always been taught that cholesterol is dangerous, that it increases the risk of heart attacks and it clogs arteries. And the doctors haven't been taught much about nutrition. So a lot of doctors that's been practicing for many years have been fearful of cholesterol for a long, long time, and we've been the guidelines have taught us to prescribe statins to reduce the risk of heart attacks, and I have been doing that for more years than I have been practicing low carb. So I spend a lot of time in relearning and unlearning what is being taught. And so you've got to understand from the doctor's perspective that this is what they've been taught. But
Mm.
what the I'm trying to understand is with the cholesterol profile, it's might be a different theory altogether. It might not be actually clogging arteries. Our body needs cholesterol, and cholesterol is actually quite beneficial because we need cholesterol for hormones, we need cholesterol for cell membranes, and eating healthy fat will help you with making cholesterol, and your brain makes cholesterol, your liver will make cholesterol. And if you have a healthy diet, then you're more likely to make LDLs, which are beneficial for you. And there's actually different subtypes of LDLs. There's LDL type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's big fluffy types of LDLs, which doesn't increase the risk of clogging arteries. And then there's small dense LDLs, which does increase the risk of clogging arteries.
And
And if you measure the LDL and measure the different subtypes, then we can get a better idea on what subtype of LDLs you've got. And I also like to work to incorporate the whole patient as a whole, not just looking at the cholesterol profile or the LDLs. So I like to look at what the person is eating, the metabolic profile, is there any raised blood pressure, what the HbA1c, that's the average blood glucose over a 3-month period, and also incorporate the triglyceride. And a lot of the times I also like to organize a coronary artery calcium score. So incorporating all those data, we can get a better idea on the risk of heart attack for this particular person. And sometimes it's the many years of following a standard diet before the person that's come into a low carb keto or carnivore diet that's done some damage
mm,
with the heart disease. So there's a lot of different ways of looking into this cholesterol.
yes, so there is a separate blood test people can get to distinguish between the soft and the hard LDL.
Mm, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this
Mm.
particular blood test is called LDL subfractions. And it does cost extra on top of Medicare and cost about $110 for this particular test, but we do get much more information on what your subtype of LDLs are. So I like to organize this test as well as incorporate the whole patient data to look at what the risk of heart attacks for this person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very encouraging, and you were certainly describing me a few moments ago with the high CAC score. That when I come to see him, I was very high, which I found a bit alarming. Um,
Mm,
but as you're saying, that's the result of many years of poor eating habits,
mm,
rather than like I was just talking to my daughter on the phone today, and I mentioned my CAC score to her, and she said, "Dad,
mm.
that's because you're doing carnivore and it will give you cancer." And I said, "No."
Oh,
I said, "No, that's calcium. It's probably built up over many years and got very
yeah.
little to do with being carnivore and not in the last few months."
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah. So just coming back to um, carnivores and doctors, because I know this is
Yes.
it's a really hot issue. It's the one I hear all the time. Um, so if a person is having difficulty talking to their doctor, can you suggest some ways they might approach? Say the typical scenario: the doctor says your LDL is really high. Um, I'll give you a statin, and they're uncomfortable with that. Um, how should they proceed with that conversation?
Yeah, it still continues to be difficult. I think I might suggest a few things and your listeners can think about it. You can suggest to your doctors that you're eating a real food diet rather and got rid of all the sugars and processed foods. You can also say it's a modified Mediterranean diet because most doctors are in happy that they're happy
Yeah.
that the patient is eating a Mediterranean diet. So it is a modified Mediterranean diet, eating real food, and that might be make the doctor a bit happier. You can also ask the doctor if the doctor's just concentrating on the total cholesterol and the LDL. You can ask the doctor to incorporate it into a calculator and tell them what's the benefits of taking a statin, is
Mm.
how many days am I living longer? Am I living longer for days or months or years? And most doctors would have a calculator, a cardiovascular risk calculator that we can punch into. You can also think about the number needed to treat. So if you take a statin, so if a doctor gives you a statin, and how many patients needed to treat to save a life? So doctors do think about that. It is a bit difficult, but we can you can raise that question and think about um, the number needed to treat. And there is calculators online. You can also go and come and see me for just this reason, and I have a calculator that I would put your numbers in, and I will give you an informed decision on what your risk is with taking a statin and what your risk is without taking the statin. And in some patients, I have um, done this consultation and written a letter back to the doctor that if the patient has a very low coronary artery calcium score and doing a low carb ketogenic diet, the risk is actually very, very low. So there are some papers showing that, and I have written back a letter back to the treating doctor explaining that. And your doctor, you're most welcome to keep seeing that doctor. I'm not trying to claim a new patient. But it remains difficult, is the answer.
Yeah, yes. And sometimes people get to the point where they say, I need to find a new doctor, one who is more understanding of my situation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I know with myself, my whole journey started, I'd always been about 20 kilos overweight. And
Mm,
then I went for just like an annual checkup, although it had been like
mhm,
more like 2 years. And
mhm,
the doctor said to me, "You've got high blood pressure." And it was quite
mm,
high, like it was 185 over something. And so she prescribed me a blood pressure medication. And over the course of the next year, I continued to take the medication, but it didn't work. So she would just increase the dose and then gave me a second tablet
mm.
as well. And
Yep.
then finally, I when I began to do a bit of research, I found out about
Mm,
carnivore and thought I'm going to try this. And then within 3 months, my blood pressure dropped, and I'd lost quite a bit of weight. And my doctor then said to me, "Of course, your blood pressure will come down if you lose weight." And I never said anything, but I thought, "You never told me that. All you told me was
mm,
take a tablet." And yet when I asked her about how should I lose weight, this is before I'd heard of carnivore, um,
mm,
she was she just said, "Well, what have you tried before?" And I thought she stopped talking like a doctor and started talking like the lady next door, you know. Um, I was very glad I did lose the weight and had so many other health
Yeah,
benefits.
yeah.
But
What happens with the blood pressure is the hypertension is part of the metabolic syndrome. So it's
yeah,
part
no,
of the
it came right down. It's generally 110, 120 over. I don't know what the other number is. And I
yep.
used to take it every day. Now I just take it once a week just to
Oh,
keep an
good.
eye on it. And
Yep, yep.
so I measure the things that you can measure at home, like my weight and my blood pressure and my blood glucose. Prick my finger once a week, and
Oh, good.
just keep an eye on those things that you can measure. And the rest of the things I come and see you for. So,
Yeah, the
yeah,
doctors haven't been taught that blood pressure is related to part of metabolic syndrome. So most of us think it's essential hypertension, which means we don't know the cause of hypertension. So that's why
yeah,
we just give medication. Whereas within the diagnosis of metabolic syndrome, the hypertension is certainly a cause of it. And I've come to understand that if you are eating a standard diet over a period of time, insulin resistance gets worse. And then you start putting on belly fat, and it's just a vicious cycle if you keep eating a standard diet.
mm,
So it's a disappointing that doctors haven't learned this, and I've certainly asked a few patients to reduce their carbohydrates, and their blood pressure get much better, which is amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was certainly my experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So you've got a number of projects going at the moment. I know
yeah,
you had the health retreat up at
yeah,
Mansfield, was it? And you're also
yeah,
doing a breath workshop or a breath clinic. Um,
yeah.
And,
Yep.
you did come out to Pakenham where I live and speak at that dinner recently where I heard you,
Yeah.
and, I thought that was a wonderful night, and, it was good to be there. But just take a few moments and share some of your projects and what your passion is for some of these.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, when I came to Pakenham is because John Stewart, he used to be a vet and he's now a coach for in the low carb space, and he organised this dinner at Pakenham in the Thai restaurant. And because I love speaking about low carb, and I love John, how he's very passionate about spreading the word as well. So it was a lovely dinner. It was fantastic to speak to a group of people about low carb, keto, and carnivore in Pakenham. So that was great. And last weekend, I organised a retreat with Julie Bristow from Rejuvenate Health Retreats. So Julie and I have collaborated for about a year. She's a personal trainer, and she and I have organised a couple of workshops, and she normally organises retreats herself. And we've decided to do this intermittent fasting retreat in Mansfield, which was great. We had 5 participants, and we did some bushwalk and talked about low carb mindset. Julie hosts some yoga training. I did some breath work, and that was great to be able to go away myself and spread the word and have a mini holiday as well
Yeah.
as connect with the community. So that was great.
Yeah, and
And
great for
then
people to have
yeah,
unhurried time with you and
yeah, yeah, that's right. And next weekend where I'm hosting a Breathe in Health half day retreat, which I my other special interest is learning about breathing, which I did a couple of courses. Last year, I did a course called Oxygen Advantage, which your listeners can go and look at the book called Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown. Then I
yeah.
also did a course called Breathless Expedition. I did it online, but you can also go do it live in the snowy mountains for 5 days. So this course taught me how to be a breathwork facilitator and the importance of functional breathing. A lot of people don't know how they're breathing. They don't pay attention. Sometimes they breathe through their mouth, sometimes they breathe too
Mm,
much, which makes anxiety worse, which can make your sympathetic drive worse, makes sleeping worse, and exacerbates sleep apnea, snoring, even asthma. So I'm trying to incorporate all sorts of natural and holistic lifestyle modifications into my practice, which I think it's great. I'm very happy on the direction that I'm going, that I'm incorporating lifestyle into my general practice and not just talking about prescribing medications. So I'm hoping this workshop next week, and then next year I'm going to host this breathwork workshops, which takes 3 hours. I'm hoping to run this every 4 weeks.
Mm. That's excellent. And you've also got a podcast.
Yeah, that's right. My podcast is called Prescribing Lifestyle, and I have 2 episodes released every week. And I one episode a week I would talk by myself, and then the other episode I would invite guests to talk on their journey, to share how they've changed their life. And some of the guests are professionals, some of the guests are lay people, just sharing their own journey and sharing their story. And it's been a great
Hmm.
journey, inviting my guest over to my Prescribing Lifestyle podcast.
Yeah, no, that's very encouraging. And I'll put links to those things down below in the description for people to follow. And for people in Melbourne, they can look up the Low Carb Clinic and find you. You're in 3 locations now, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
in Montana and Pascoe Vale and
that's
Paran,
it.
was it?
Yeah, the clinic is called Melbourne Low Carb Clinic, and it should be coming up on Google. I started in Montana, and I've been in Montana Mall Clinic for almost 20 years. So most of the time I'm in Montana, and a few months ago I started one day a fortnight in Pascoe Vale South on Bell Street Family Medical Centre. And a couple of months ago, I started in Paran, in Being Well in Paran. So they can book all of those locations through myself and the Melbourne Low Carb Clinic on the website, or they can
Yeah.
just email me or message me.
So you do all of that and be a wife and a mother and run all these clinics and run the surgery and the practice and still find time to do this sort of thing on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. We've just finished watching a movie. I took my son, who's almost 13, and I've got another son who's almost 16. Actually, he's 16 today, so that's his birthday today, and we go out for dinner afterwards.
Oh, great. Yeah, yeah. Well, look, Amy, thank you very much for joining us today. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but been very anxious for my viewers to meet you and to see who you are. I've spoken about you several times, and so I know so many people have said to me, "I'm looking forward to this interview." So I
Oh,
want to
really?
say,
Oh, great.
yeah, I want to say thank you for coming in and making time on a Sunday and being so generous with your time.
Great. Okay. Thank you for inviting me and having me, Larry.
Yeah, my pleasure.